What is up, Roelof here for Black Salt Audio. Thanks again for tuning in, guys. We're gonna take a look at mixing kick drums today, and we're gonna try to simplify that whole process and get all the complicated stuff out of the way. We're gonna focus on just a couple main simple principles that you can follow each and every single time, and you're gonna end up with great huge kick drums every single time. So first I'll share these principles with you, and then we're gonna take a look at two different examples in different genres, see how we can apply those principles and get massive kicks every single time. Now, the first principle is obvious, right? It's just the low end, and we can divide that low end into two crucial areas that you have to get right, which are the sub low end and the low mids, and the low mids are going to be responsible for most of the power, actually. Then the attack is the second principle. You really need to enhance a lot of attack so that your kick drum cuts through no matter how dense the arrangement in your song gets, and so that your kick becomes audible on smaller speakers, and of course also so that your mix just gets a lot of punch and power, right? Then the third principle is the scoop in the mid-range, which can be a little bit more tricky because this one really depends a lot on the genre, but also on the recording that you have, that you're dealing with. So you need to be more or less aggressive in scooping the mid-range, depending on that. And I see a lot of people making the mistake of either cutting way too much mid-range or just leaving way too much of it in, which are equally big problems, right? So we need to take a look at that and just get it exactly right. So let's apply those principles in two different examples here, a rock song and a way more mellow song, and see how we can get our kicks just right by just focusing on those three main principles here. So this is going to be the rock example in this video. And since you guys seem to enjoy mixing something different than rock music, this is going to be our second example here. Alright, so for the rock example, I want to show you what our finished kick sounds like just in solo here. This is what we ended up with. So we got all three principles applied there. We got big low end, low mids, we got a lot of attack, and there's a healthy scoop in the mid range that isn't too deep that we end up with a super empty kind of kick sound here. So let's just now delete all the plugins, let's mix it from scratch, see how we take a raw recording up onto this finished mix here. Alright, let's check out just the kick in solo and see what kind of starting point we have here, see what we have to do in order to get that big kick that we just heard. Alright, so there's a little bit of bleed going on. So first off, we're just going to gate it. Go to kick mode here and make sure that there's absolutely no cymbal bleed, at least in between, because I know that's going to be problematic later on. So I'm going to do a significant amount of deep bleeding there, again, just to get rid of the cymbals, so that once we boost more high frequencies, they're not going to come up in an annoying way. Then we go to Telos drums, and let's just tackle these principles one by one. Let's start with the low end. Now, luckily this recording already has a decent amount of low end just by itself. Especially low mids, actually. So we don't even have to boost a lot of low mids here, or low end in general. Just a little bit. And of course, I'd say it's a little bit boomy already, so let's actually tighten up the lower mid-range a little bit here. Because, yeah, like I said in the principles, the low end, so the sub-low end and the low mids, those are the two crucial areas that you have to get right. And in this case, this kick has a little bit of like a boomy feel to it, right? It's just like a little bit too strong in the low mids. So in this case, we have to cut some of that out. I'm just going to use the tight knob here on Telos drums. I don't want to cut everything out. So this is too boomy. That would be way too empty, right? Boomy again, so let's find the sweet spot here. I'd say it's right about there. Maybe we can even push the low end even a little bit further now. And then of course we still have the sub channel over here that we can use to kind of augment the sub low ends. So we don't even have to worry about that for now. For this channel, I'm mostly looking for the low mids. I want beefy, big low mids that are not boomy. So the tight knob is really, really the crucial thing for this channel here. We probably have to readjust this after we have the sub channel in and even the sample in and see where that's going to end up. Now, let's worry about the other principle, which is the attack now. I'm going to start with compressing first. The compressor here is a slow attack, fast release compressor so that it's really emphasizing the start, right? Just that initial hit of the kick sound here. And it basically just sounds as if he's hitting the kick twice as hard when we're compressing it, right? So that's what I'm listening for. I just want that. I just want it to sound as if he's playing harder there. So that's exactly doing its job there. Now we can also enhance the high frequencies here to get more attack even still, because the kick is a little bit dark, but it's actually the higher frequencies that are going to allow it to cut through dense arrangements and everything. So we'll try to push that as far as we can go here. I would like to argue that this kick recording was probably done by a microphone that already has some sort of like a sound, kind of like an EQ curve printed, you know, in the mic itself, so that it's kind of already EQ'd on the way in. I'm not always a fan of that. I like to have a little bit more control over that EQ myself, because now I'm kind of not sure if this is the right amount of attack or... It's the right amount, I'd say, but it's maybe not my favorite character, so let's also boost a bit of mid-range here, like upper mid-range, to get a little bit more of like a strong kind of clicky sound that is not just a bunch of top end, but also has significant amount of mid-range in it, so that it's, again, just more powerful of a clicky sound here. We have to be careful here to not bring up too much of that like beach ball sound, you know, so little bit of smoothing here will actually do just that. So we're boosting a lot of low end, we're boosting a lot of top end, which is also kind of simultaneously applying that third principle of the mid-range scoop, right? Because we're bringing up low and high, which leaves the mid-range kind of down at 0. So we don't even have to do a ton of smoothing here. The last thing I do want to do is a lot of drive here. So we have this kick pretty much enhanced to the max that we can do in this plugin. And now I just want to, you know, have more of that exact same kick sound, which is exactly what the drive is going to do here. Kind of compensate with the output, of course. It almost sounds like we duplicated the channel and just have that playing twice, you know. That's what the drive is doing. I really like that. Let's work with that for now. So now we have pretty much 3 principles applied here. We got low end, at least the low mids. We have that. We have a healthy scoop in the mid-range. Actually, I want to show you what it sounds like if we take that too far, which is another very common issue. Because if you scoop the mid-range too much, you're just going to end up with a little bit of sub-low end all the way here and a little bit of top end all the way there. And it's going to be a super kind of empty kick sound, which is very ugly in my opinion. So this is what that would sound like. Right, it's just the sub-low end now. And a bunch of clicky sounds. So we don't want to have a too big of a scoop in the mid-range. We just want to get rid of something that annoys us, and that should be enough here. So smooth is at 24%, which is not a lot here. Okay, now let's check out the kick sub-low end, see what this is sounding like. Luckily, we have a bunch of sub there, but we still have a lot of mid-range kind of honkiness going on as well. So let's see if we can get rid of that. And actually maybe just duplicate the gate just in case. so that we don't have any unwanted sound whatsoever. That is pretty good. Okay, now let's see what we can do here. I'm just looking for sub low end here. I'm not looking for mid-range. I'm not looking for attack. I really just want that sub channel to just, you know, live up to its name here. So smoothness gone. Here we go. Or the mid-range gone, I should say. And just more low end. And then by driving it, it's also gonna give us a little bit more of low mid like beef. I'm hoping at least, so. Yes, exactly. Especially people that are listening on smaller speakers are gonna be able to perceive this a little bit more. This gives you a little bit more of that kind of woofy low end. Now let's balance these channels out against each other. And I'm gonna put on some headphones here to make sure that these channels are in phase with each other. And if they're not, it's probably gonna result in a lack of low end rather than more low end. So let's see what it's sounding like here. It's very, very subby, right? So we probably don't even need that much of the sub kick. But for now, we'll just keep the volume up here. And make sure that we have a phase alignment correctly. Okay, so this is one of those cases where the flip the phase thing doesn't really cancel it out as much, but it's just kind of causing a shift in the low end. So when we have the phase not flipped here, we have a lot of super low subby, like 30 hertz kind of stuff going on. And when we flip the phase, it's kind of shifted up a little bit more towards the 60, 70 hertz. In this case, I think I like the 60 hertz, so with the phase flipped a little bit better. Because it just sounds a little bit more powerful to me. So I'm gonna use that, see what that sounds like, and then we can get back to the NS10s here. And let's blend in the sample now. I'll show you what kind of samples I've chosen and why. So this is the trigger plugin. This is the first sample. This is Savage Kick. I think you can purchase this. It's Billy Decker kick. The reason I picked this is because it has a lot of that kind of low mids that even with the kick in mic, it just doesn't really have that. And the sample, it just has even more of that kind of powerful low mid. So that was a good reason for me to do that. And then this monster kick. The reason I picked this, it sounds kind of weird and not super nice on its own. But when we play these together, I really like how the monster kick actually kind of complements the Savage kick here. So a little bit more mid-rangey attack, which I tend to enjoy nowadays a little bit more. So now if you blend that with the live kicks here, the balance that I'm looking for here is that they're really just complementing each other. So the live kick on its own is not going to sound finished just yet. The sample on its own is not going to sound finished just yet, but both of them together, that's really when you get that kind of massive kick sound. So the live kick on its own, the sample on its own, both of them not quite good enough, but when you play them together, that's really when you get that kind of working together. It's like we have a lot of sub low end, we have a lot of low mids, we have a lot of attack, and the scoop in the mid range seems to be in the right place here, where we don't want to end up with a super empty kick where it's just the low end and just the top end attack. But we want a little bit more of that information in between as well. All right, now that we have a good starting point in solo at least, let's make sure that it works in the full mix. So let's just unsolo these tracks. Let's play the full mix, see if we have to make any adjustments, see if we're happy with what it's sounding like. Okay, so I'm just bringing it up in volume. I'm thinking we need a little bit more attack here. So I'm just pulling up the Telos Drums plugin that was already on the bus, but there was no processing going on. Let's push the attack a little bit further specifically. So let's see. A little bit more high frequencies, possibly a bit more compression. Let's do this in context of the full mix. I like that mid-range attacky sound because as soon as we played the full mix, I thought the attack with the extra high was actually a little bit too, what is it? Just too harsh, not as like nice. You know what I mean? It's just that like super high kind of clicky sound. Not a massive fan, so I like to go a little bit lower here. Kind of have a little bit of both so that we just have a little bit broader kind of attack sound, not just the top end, not just the mid-range, but kind of both. So a little bit more compression. I'm not really liking it extra high end, so I'm just getting rid of that. I do like the extra compression. Let's see, maybe even a bit more low here. And then we have like pretty massive kick, which is now a little bit too loud. I just had it louder on purpose so that we can really make sure that all the frequency stuff, the dynamics are in a good spot. And now we can kind of balance the kick in, context of the full mix. Make sure that we're happy with that. And that is pretty much where I would like that to end up volume-wise. Cool, happy with that. Now, this was the somewhat more complicated example of the video here because we had a kick in, we have a sub track, and we have a sample here. So we have to kind of combine the three in order to get all of these things out, the three principles. Now, let's go over to the other song where we just have a kick in, and that's all that we're going to be using for that song, and see how far we can do that when we just have one track and simplify it even more. Okay, different song, different genre, way different kick drum, just a kick track, a kick in probably, and that's it. This is what it sounds like. Still quite beefy. So again, let's just delete all plugins. Let's mix it from scratch and see how we get to that sound, but hopefully in even a simpler way this time. So first up, let's see what it sounds like with no plugins. There's even more bleed on this one, so now I'm thinking this is probably a kick out, which is fine. We're just gonna gate it. Again, kick mode, all the stock settings here. That's perfect, we're not gonna change that. Alright, let's work on those three principles again. Low end, attack, and mid-range scoop. But probably in somewhat of a different way this time. So, let's start with the low end. This recording is also blessed with a healthy amount of it already, which is good. As well as a low mid-range actually, so we're probably gonna have to tighten that up a little bit because this is already a little bit too mid-rangey maybe. But especially in a genre like this where it's more subtle, it's not as energetic as the other example that we just worked on. We're probably gonna have to want a little bit more low mids and less sub low end on the kick, because we're not going for like maximum arena rock kind of low end here, right? So we're probably gonna focus a little bit more on the low mids for this one. So I'm not gonna, clean up the low mids too much. I'm thinking kind of like that for now at least. We'll see what it sounds like later in the full mix. However, there is a lot of mid-range here that we really don't need, so we have to smooth that out quite aggressively, most likely. It's kind of that basketball-y kind of sound, so... Again, the center frequency seems to be the sweet spot already. Yeah, but even when we smooth it out, we probably even push the low end a bit too far already. So, scoop out the mid-range, we have some low and low end. Now we need a bunch more attack because it's pretty dark. But again, it's like same principles, we're just doing it in different amounts because it's a different genres. But the thinking and the mindset behind mixing the kick is exactly the same, right? The low end, the attack, and the scoop in the mid-range. Bit of compression. I want to compensate for the extra hot output here. Okay, so that seems to be okay-ish. It's still fairly dark. But again, I don't want to push too much high frequencies because then it's going to be too much of like a rock kick again or like a metal kick even. So I don't want to do too much there. Let's see what this sounds like in the full mix just now. It is okay, but I would like that attack to be just a little bit warmer. And I think I would like a little bit more saturation on the kick, because it does feel like a somewhat small kick still. So I want to make it a little bit bigger. Let's start with that actually. I'll lower the output again. Yeah, just a healthy amount of drive here. Again, just makes it feel like a bigger kick. It's more of everything. Really enjoyable. And then the clicky sound, the attack, I want to push that a little bit further, but probably not with the high one, because I already feel like we're at the limit of how pokey and how harsh I kind of would like this kick to be. So I'm going for a mid-range boost here. We'll see how that is sitting in the full mix just now. And I think that is pretty much perfect, exactly how we want that. In terms of the low end, the low mids, most specifically the mid-range scoop. Again, we're not scooping all of the mid-range here. We're actually leaving quite a bit of mid-range in the kick sound here. I'll show you what it sounds like if we do too much scooping, which again is a very common mistake where people just end up with just the low end and just the attack. Which is kind of like this, right? This would be pretty acceptable in like a heavier rock track or a metal track, but in this genre, too scooped. So I want to get a healthy amount of that basketball sound out of there, but leave a little bit of that in on purpose. Again, just to kind of prevent us from ending up with a very scooped kind of empty kind of kick sound here. Same thing with the tight actually, by tightening up the lower mids. If we do too much of that one, it's even crazier, right? It's even just the low end and some clicky sound. Absolutely no information in between anymore. So this one actually gives you the perfect amount of control over the amount of low mid-range. So way too little low mids. Almost nothing. Very boomy and very ugly. And there we have it. Pretty much the right amount there. And then in the mix, when we notice that the kick isn't really cutting through in the lower mid-range, again, we can really make use of that tight knob here to kind of give us more control over that, right? So, to my ears, that is a little bit too boomy, right? It's kind of messing with the guitars and the bass here. once again, once we crank it up, the kick almost completely disappears, right? There's no information anymore, just some sub low end and some clicky sound. And there we have it, pretty much on the sweet spot right there, just the right amount of low mid-range that still kind of cuts through the mix and gives you a little bit of like beef and power there, but it doesn't overwhelm like it is when we dial this back here. Now, let's say you're working with something like this where you just have a kick in or a kick out, whatever this is, and you still want more sub low end, and a good trick for that will be just to crank up some low control here and just compress it below 70, 60, somewhere around there. I'll just play this in solo, just as kind of an example here. And then we can just boost up that low frequency section here. And enhance it. So that is, let's say that we don't have a sub track or whatever. This is how I would crank up the sub low end if we don't have the luxury. In this genre, obviously we don't need that much sub low end, right? But let's say you're working on a simple kick arrangement like this in a rock song. Grab some low control, crank it up there. You get a ton of control over the sub low end there. Alright, hopefully this video gives you some clarity on how you can really simplify the mixing of your kick drums and just focus on those three main principles, right? The low end, the mid-range, scoop, and the attack. And if you get just those three things right, you're gonna get an awesome kick sound here. So, hope this helps. If you want to see this same story, but then for snare drums, please check out this video next, and I'll see you in the next one.